He was a part of a 4-man survey crew. They were working in wooded areas out there. And 3 people came home and 1 did not. Chris simply vanished. And when I say vanished, I need y'all to listen to me. Chris simply vanished. They believe Chris had just walked away. I said, if a man gonna walk away, he wouldn't take off his boot to do so. No, he probably want to keep both of them on if he was gonna be walking.
On the morning of January 25th, 2002, a 20-year-old named Christopher Carlton Thompkins, who went by Chris, woke up in the home he shared with his mother in Columbus, Georgia, and started getting ready for his workday. At around 8:10 on that Friday morning, he kissed his mother goodbye and stepped out into the cool winter morning. He then climbed into the car he had bought only 2 weeks prior, with help from his grandmother, and drove to the building of the surveying company he worked for. After parking his car in the business's parking lot, Chris was said to have hitched a ride to the day's work site with his boss. That day, he was scheduled to work with a team of 3 other surveyors on a plot of land in the small, unincorporated community of Ellerslie, Georgia, about 20 minutes outside of Columbus. According to the Ledger, Columbus's local newspaper, one of the 3 surveyors that would be working with Chris that day was the son of the company's owner. An interesting fact of this case is that Christopher's mother worked as a babysitter for this man's children. It's unclear how long she had been working for the family, but the Ledger reported in September of 2002 that she had not worked for them since the events of January 25th. For those that are unaware, surveyors, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, make precise measurements to determine property boundaries so that legal disputes are prevented. Surveyors can face some unique issues at work, such as scrutiny from locals if they are working in an area where development is contentious. And of course, working primarily outdoors opens up the possibility for wild animal encounters and exposure to the elements. There's also the danger of distracted drivers when working near roads, but if all necessary precaution is taken, surveying should be a relatively safe job. Once everyone had arrived at the work site, the group of 4 gathered their equipment and began moving into a lightly wooded area between Interstate 85 and Warm Springs Road, near the county line separating Harris County from Muskogee County. An exact pinpoint of their location is not available, but they were likely working in the area shown on screen. Although surrounded by stretches of dense wilderness, the 2 roads enclosing this area are only about 1/3 of a mile apart. The 4 progressed through the woods in a single file, each surveyor maintaining about 50 feet of distance from the other, with Christopher being the last in this line. It is unknown who was closest to Christopher, as this information was not released to the public, but this person later told authorities that they had been talking to Christopher while they worked, occasionally turning around and seeing that he was following close behind. As they continued into the woods, working and talking to each other, the 3rd surveyor in line noticed that Chris suddenly stopped responding. After only seeing him a moment before, the surveyor turned around and saw that Chris was gone, that he had left the area without a sound. His coworker wasn't immediately alarmed by this, because he figured that Chris had just gone to use the restroom, so he continued on, expecting Chris to come back at any minute. However, Chris would not come back to the work site, and at sometime around 1 p.m., a call was made by one of the surveyors to his wife to tell her that Christopher had gone missing. The head of the survey crew was also alerted of Christopher's disappearance at this time, around 1 p.m. Several questions arise from this information. First of all, we don't know what time Chris was last seen. Only about 5 hours had passed from when he left his home to the 1 p.m. phone call, but other than this window of time, we have no other details regarding when he was last seen. Second of all, we don't know why this coworker calls his wife to tell her about Chris's disappearance, instead of calling the authorities or anyone from Christopher's family. As was previously mentioned, one of the crew members employed Christopher's mother, so it is possible that they had her phone number on hand and could have called her at any moment. Regardless, Over 3 more hours would pass before Chris's mother, Ann McKenzie, was alerted of her son's disappearance at 4:15 p.m. Mrs. McKenzie was shocked to hear of her son's disappearance, as she believed he would not have just walked away from the job site, especially without saying anything to his crew. She called the Harris County Sheriff's Department that afternoon to report her son as a missing person, but according to a 2008 article by the Ledger, the family was told that, because Christopher was an adult and allowed to walk away of his own volition, they had to wait 24 hours before filing a formal missing persons report. This meant that until a full day had passed, the police would not assist in the search for Christopher. In response to this, Ann McKenzie quickly gathered up members of her family and drove to Ellerslie to start a search of their own. They would spend the next few hours traversing the woods and open land where he was last seen, until finally they stumbled upon some of Chris's items. Caught on a barbed wire fence was one of Christopher's boots. Scattered about this area were several more of his belongings. "What we found was puzzling," said Mrs. McKenzie. "It did not make sense in light of what Christopher's coworkers told authorities. We found one of his boots, his work tools, a blue fiber from his pants, and 12 cents on the ground near the items. The statements by his employer and coworkers indicated that they believed Christopher just walked off the job site without telling anyone. It's unclear exactly why the crew assumed he had just walked away from the job site. It doesn't appear that Chris had ever disappeared like this before, and his family insisted that this behavior was uncharacteristic. He wouldn't go anywhere without anyone not knowing where he is, his mother said. His friend Jasmine agreed with this, saying, "He's not the type of person who's just going to walk away." Indeed, the items found at the barbed wire fence didn't seem to paint a picture of someone who had just walked away from their job. Some believed that this scene indicated that Chris had frantically climbed over the fence, dropping his tools, catching a fiber of his pants on the fence, and emptying his pockets on the way over. In this scenario, his boot may have gotten stuck as he tumbled over the fence, and rather than taking the time to stop and untangle it, he may have just pulled his foot out and kept walking or running. But it didn't make sense to Chris's family that he would have abandoned one of his shoes, especially on a cool day in the woods. Some have speculated that Chris took the shoe off in a panic, and that it could have been too dangerous to stop and recover his shoe. However, this theory leads to another host of issues. A question that arises is what could have been chasing Christopher that his other crew members neither saw nor heard. Western Georgia is home to several species of predatory animals, but none that are known to normally target humans. Roughly 5,000 black bears roam the state, but there has never been a recorded attack on humans in the state's history. Unprovoked attacks are very rare, but if one had occurred that day in January, it's unlikely it would have gone unnoticed by bystanders. The same could be said for feral pigs, of which there could be up to 600,000 in Georgia at any given time. None of the surveyors said they heard anything after Christopher vanished, which seems like it could disprove the chasing theory. Even if the surveyor closest to Chris didn't hear him take off running from 50 feet away, it's likely every crew member would have heard screaming and cries for help, or even the animal itself. Additionally, an animal attack would have left a large amount of physical evidence behind, but I could find no information alluding to this or any sign of struggle in the woods. Once 24 hours had passed, with still no sign of Christopher, Harris County Police joined in the search and launched their own investigation. But from the beginning of police involvement in the search, there appears to have been a disconnect between Harris County officials and the family of Christopher Thompkins. When asked about the potential for a criminal investigation, Sheriff Mike Jolly responded, "It is a missing person report. That is how we have it listed," later saying that, after sending bloodhounds and cadaver dogs to the area, as well as searching at least one lake, they found no evidence of foul play. "We have done a lot of extra investigation activity for it to be just a missing person," he continued. "I feel very comfortable with the work this office has done." Yet after months of many questions and no answers, Christopher's mother did not share this sentiment, saying, "They had houses with locked doors out there they could have checked. There were wells in the area. We literally begged them to search wells and lakes. It is unclear if Harris County officials ever searched any of the abandoned houses or wells alleged to be in this area. There also seems to have been some disagreement between Chris's employer and Chris's family about his behavior leading up to the 25th. Mrs. McKenzie alleged that Chris's boss told police her son had been acting strangely for several days leading up to his disappearance, although he didn't give any specific examples. She rebuked his statement, saying that her son's behavior had been nothing but normal. There would not be another development in this case until months later, when Christopher's other boot was found by a landowner on private property off Interstate 85, miles from where the first boot was left. I could not find any more specifics about this discovery, and it is unknown if the other boot shed any light on what may have happened to Chris. In the months after Chris's disappearance, the Thompkins family teamed up with Antonio Carter, Georgia chair of the National Action Network, to protest Harris County's handling of the investigation, as well as to keep Chris's story in the public eye. In a speech made in September of 2002, Antonio Carter asked two things of Harris County Police. First, that the 3 members of the survey team working with Thompkins be polygraphed, and second, that an outside agency, such as the GBI, do a thorough investigation. The GBI, or Georgia Bureau of Investigation, appears to have taken control of Harris County's investigation sometime in 2004, shortly before the 2nd anniversary of Chris's disappearance. But the department was criticized by Carter and the Thompkins family for a lack of updates and transparency in their investigative efforts. Carter was still involved in Chris's case as recently as 2015, when a press conference was held to give updates on the search for Christopher. Carter said that although it had been 13 years since they had first called for the interrogation of Chris's 3 coworkers, not a single person had ever been interrogated.
Turn the case over to the GBI. We went to the GBI's headquarters in Greenville, Georgia, maybe a year or so ago, and I sat down and met with Vernon Keenan, who is the director of the GBI. We talked for quite some time, and what they told Ms. McKenzie was that they were sorry. Sometimes these things just happen. This lady has not seen her child in 13 years. Now, if your child vanishes and it's 3 other people with him, don't you think at least a polygraph test or something is in order? They haven't even been interrogated. Wow. That is actual fact. They have not been interrogated. One of the individuals went and got a lawyer the very next week. Everything I'm telling you I can prove. One of the individuals who was with him has been polygraphed because he was in prison. He had been arrested on a robbery charge. So they went to the prison to talk to him and they said they polygraphed him. But what about the other 2? Had never, ever even been interrogated. Now,
a theory often brought up in this case is that Christopher's coworkers knew more about his disappearance than what they revealed to law enforcement. The Thompkins family have often voiced their frustration with Harris County officials and Chris's coworkers over what seems to be an insistence on both of their parts that Christopher simply walked away of his own free will. Chris's mother especially felt that her son's disappearance was downplayed by authorities and not approached with the urgency his case warranted. Antonio Carter has also been outspoken in criticizing the agencies responsible for Chris's case, going as far as to call the GBI and Harris County Sheriff's Department liars in the summer of 2004. In 2008, on the 6th anniversary of her son's disappearance, Christopher's mother said the following: "I truly believe in my heart that my son is no longer alive. However, I need closure." As of February 2023, it has been 21 years since Christopher's disappearance, and it's hard to imagine the pain the Thompkins family has endured all this time, without their loved one and without answers. They have worked extremely hard over the years to keep Chris's memory alive, and they still hold out hope that they can one day have answers as to what happened that day in 2002. If you have any information that could help put an end to the search for Christopher, I will have all relevant contact information linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a blessed day, and as always, stay safe.